morning, good evening, and good afternoon, lovely people, depending on where you are watching us from in this beautiful world. And today, I'm so stoked because I have Sally Anderson back with me. Sally and I started a really beautiful and rather intense conversation last week. And we decided, because your story, Sally, is so huge, to say the least, to do this in a three-part interview series. And today, I was really looking forward to doing today because today is all about love and connection, two of my favorite topics. And since you shared your story in a lot of depth with us last week, and for those of you who missed it, we will put the link in the show notes. I encourage you to watch it so you understand the whole flow of the story. And today we're focusing on how is love even possible when you have experienced such severe trauma, including physical attacks from a whole mob. Let me just wrap it up like that. I'm going to hand it over to you. And for those who've missed it, can you do a quick introduction? And for the proper introduction, go back and watch part one. Welcome, Sally Anderson. Thank you so much for being here again.
Absolute privilege, my friend. So we're going to talk about love today. There's a lot of connotations for love, both with reference to looking at how do you actually connect externally, with somebody else. But I also want to focus on love for yourself. I lived into decades of body dysmorphia to the extreme. To the
Yeah.
point where, I would visualize maggots on my skin. I was that revolted by myself. So I think the journey home, as it were, is that ability to learn to love yourself. It's very difficult to establish a relationship with somebody else unless, you are. And so a lot of the focus on the book that I've just launched, Beyond Brave, The Art of Living Courageously, because it takes courage to obviously even contemplate the idea of being in relationship, when you've experienced extreme trauma. And I talk about the three pillars to true transcendence: embracing discomfort, embracing resistance, and embracing confrontation. Because it's bloody confronting to talk about love. It's bloody confronting to talk about the resistance that you feel with all the things that comes with it. And it's uncomfortable, and half the time that's, I believe, the reason why people don't get beyond their grief, beyond their trauma, or find that love connection post whatever, situation they've experienced. And last time I shared about the death of my husband, 5 years ago in August.
Yeah.
And people have often said to me, because widows are not my target market. However, I was sent quite a few widows over the time, and they'd say to me, why are you so good?
Yeah.
And, I'd say to them, the devastation, what can I be grateful for? This is going to sound really weird, but it's true. And it's part of what I facilitate because it's complete reverse psychology. I'm grateful that Roger died first because I would not want him to have to go through the absolute carnage and devastation of what I went through and losing him.
Yeah.
If I could safeguard him from that, then so be it. Does that make sense?
100%. I can so understand it in every cell of my body. I absolutely understand that. Makes a lot of sense.
Because when you are faced with any form of devastation through whatever type of loss, being grateful isn't kind of like front of mind. And it's that ability to be able to be with what is. A lot of the dynamics that occur is the incessant questioning of why. Why did that have to happen? Which can literally send you mad because you're never going to find answers to the why questions.
Yeah.
And I talk about in the book, the first 8 chapters are about recalibration because your reality is completely disseminated. Your future is completely annihilated. And it takes something to kind of like recalibrate. So what I thought I'd do on today's, still focused on love, is that you use love as the context for the first 8 chapters of the book, which is talking
Mhm.
about recalibration.
Yeah,
Because when people ask, how did you, or how could you even contemplate? What is the alternative? As I often say to people,
yeah.
what is the alternative? Because love is all there is.
Mm.
That's not a new concept, right? But love is all there is. And considering the decades that I was not nice to myself off the back of the trauma that I experienced that I did not deserve, there's one thing, you're focusing on the event, and then you've got the aftermath. And
Yeah,
9 times out of 10, there's a lack of focus on what people have to endure in the aftermath, you know.
absolutely. Yeah, we touched upon that in the first part, and I think it's one of the most amazing. I don't even want to call it amazing; it's the wrong word for it. The most incredible and the whole depth of the whole part that we talked about in part one. That the focusing on the actual act, what happened in your life, the trauma, what triggered it. And you're right, nobody or hardly anyone focuses on what comes after. But that is the thing that we live with. The act itself usually lasts a day or a moment. And then what, And everybody focuses on that moment that cannot be changed. It
Mm,
cannot be changed. So focusing on that moment is an absolute loss and waste of your time and energy and resources, if you even have any available of that. But when you go forward and you look at how people then deal with it, with the devastation, with the trauma, with the all the widows that have asked you, how could you, what's the alternative? So I want to throw a little bit of a spanner in the works because I know I can with you, and I really want to go into a
of
little
course.
bit more depth with that because there is this grief and gratitude. For me, and this is my personal approach, for me, I always say grief and gratitude can't go hand in hand straight away. It needs some space in the middle before they can connect. Because to me, in that space in the middle is where healing needs to happen. So, what I mean by that is when the trauma happens, it is impossible the next day to say, like, hey, just be grateful for what you have and everything will heal. I think there needs to be a little bit of healing to happen so you can get back to gratitude. Do you agree with that, or what is your take on that? Because I could have not possibly, and I was very much actively practicing gratitude. Actually, while Rob died, I was in the middle of the book The Magic. I don't know if anybody knows it. It's like
Love
Rhonda
them.
Byrne.
Best book on
It's
gratitude.
absolutely, and I've been through it quite a few times. But there was a time when Rob died, I was in the middle of the book and I just closed it and I put it away. I could not even look at it. And it took me about, I'd say probably 1.5 years before I could pick it up again. And it wasn't that I wasn't grateful in those 1.5 years, and it wasn't that I didn't practice it, but it was this actively seeking, writing down lists. This is what I couldn't do it. I could not do it. It felt like a farce to me. So, can we delve
Mm.
into that a little bit? What was your path back to gratitude, or was it different for you?
Well, the way in which I've built the book is 8 chapters on recalibration, 8 chapters on
Hmm.
rebuilding, and 8 chapters
Yeah,
on reinvention.
yeah.
And my journey's taken me to 4.5 years.
Mm.
It doesn't happen overnight. And
Yeah.
I'm highly trained. So
Mm.
as I
Yeah,
was writing the book, I was thinking, I've done 42 years of healing. I've been in the leadership trenches 37 years, 25 years in private practice. How on earth do people get on navigating their grief if they haven't done the work? You know,
yeah.
um, like who are you in your quiet moments?
Hmm.
And in writing the book, one of the statements that I speak to is that the intensity to which I grieved is the intensity to which I loved. And
Mm.
in that, you can kind of like reconcile peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
That the severity of something can also offer you something. So
Hmm.
I've used the empowered lens because 9 times out of 10, when you're experiencing grief, it's not empowering.
No.
But because my experience was different, it wasn't different as in not as devastating, but
Mm.
different in the context of I know my husband wouldn't want me sitting here like a sad sack. You know, he wouldn't want me completely annihilated for decades, you know,
Hmm.
when he's already known, what I've had to live through. So it was almost like I call them rabbit holes
Yeah.
where you get a thought structure and you kind of like You could go down that rabbit hole
Mhm.
and it's going to lead to the same thing. It's cruel. It's not fair. Why me?
Mhm.
those questions are incessant, but they all lead to the same thing. So I had to find another way of being with reference to what it is that I was dealing with. So in answer
Yeah.
to your question, do I agree that gratitude in the early stages of grief is something that you should adopt? 110% grief does not warrant gratitude in the early stages because you're too
Mm.
fucking angry or you're too, it's
Yeah.
because,
Broken, devastated, whatever the case is. Yeah, you've got all the other emotions, but gratitude, that's something.
well,
Yeah.
I talk about it in the book, because in
Mm.
so-called white society, we might have a
Yeah.
cucumber sandwich, we go to a funeral for a few hours, and then that's it, and
Mm.
then everybody kind of like buggers off, and you're left with the aftermath. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
wow. Whereas at least within indigenous cultures, there is an honoring, there is a celebration of grief, there is
Mm.
it's a sacred completion, over days.
Yeah.
And that isolation with reference to your devastation, um,
Yeah.
there's a lot to recalibrate in those early stages. So one of
And
the,
that recalibration can feel like a lot of reeling at the beginning before you go back into that, before you find your rhythm. I think reeling was the word that really stood out for me the most, as in my emotions, my own emotions when I went through it. I really felt like reeling. And before I could, and that whole movement, that's such an intense movement emotionally to get then into recalibration. That's quite a process. And you write that really beautiful in your book. Can you give us a bit of a nutshell? And by the way, you sort of touched on it, but I want to highlight what you said. Your book came out last Friday, so
yeah,
the link will be in the show notes again. So I can highly recommend reading it.
which is
It is
beyond
incredible.
brave.
Beyond
It's
that
beyond
would be
brave.
beyond brave to read it.
Yeah,
Read it. Be
yeah,
beyond brave. Read it. So yeah, back to you,
yeah,
Sally.
yeah. Well, one of the chapters in the first 8 chapters is don't die with your partner.
Yeah.
And that's not, this the suicide ideation piece, but I saw this visual of this woman's spirit. She was standing over her husband's plot, and her spirit was wanting to go into the grave, and it really called to me at the time because sometimes that was more of an attractive concept, right?
Mhm.
But I did a lot of interviews and I met a lot of widows, and not just grief in relationship to losing a loved one. I really explored the full facet of grief. But in the context of today's discussion, I'm talking about, the loss of a loved one, specifically a partner.
Mm.
And because there are quite a few people who are the walking dead right now,
Yeah.
you know, it might have been 10 years, it might have been 20 years since your husband or your wife died. And there has been an inability to be able to, regardless of what it is that they've tried, to really reclaim their power.
Mhm.
And that really saddens me.
Yeah.
Um, I am not undermining what it takes to recalibrate from an experience of that nature, and you know that directly.
Mm.
But in the context of love, life is so short, and most of us take it for granted.
Mm.
And I know that I never had children, and it was one of my regrets in life. But I was far too dysfunctional to have children.
Mm.
But I was blessed with four of Roger's children
Mhm.
and 12 Moko grandchildren.
Mhm.
And they all call me Nana Sally, which, having never had kids, is pretty special.
Yeah.
And, in that context, I have a responsibility for how I show up, with reference
Mhm.
to who they are for me, because they've
Yeah.
been part of my healing process.
What age
Um,
gap are they in now,
mm, the
roughly?
the grandchildren,
Your bonus children.
oh, the bonus children,
Yeah.
they're in their 30s.
Mhm.
Yeah, all four of them are in their 30s,
Yeah.
and unbelievable the bond and the connection that we
Mm.
have, and feel beyond grateful and beyond blessed. Yeah.
I love that. I would like to shortly digress from the story here because I always love hearing How did you meet Roger?
When
We want to hear that part.
I was 18,
Mhm,
I decided two things. Don't ask me why. One was uh, we think about what we want to. Every day we're thinking something of a complimentary nature. You know, love your tie, love your perfume, love you this, love you that.
mhm.
But often we don't speak it. And I also decided that I would ask people how they met. So I'm 60.
Yeah.
So from 18 to 60, the amount of I love being able to compliment people on a daily basis that if I think it, say it, and the conversations that evokes.
Mhm.
And also asking people how they met. I mean, I could write an encyclopedia of the extraordinary stories and the synchronistic moments on how people have connected. So I did a 60-minute documentary, which I spoke about in the first episode,
Mhm.
and I was asked to facilitate what's called a wānanga on a marae in the Upper North Island of New Zealand, which is a family gathering, which was pretty extraordinary considering I'm a white Pākehā woman, to be honoured with being able to facilitate that with this particular family. And I had never met Roger. I'd only met Roger's wife, sorry, Roger's sister. And so I knew Roger's sister, and
Mhm.
she put me forward to facilitate and asked Roger whether he would attend.
Mhm.
There was a lot of dynamics within the family, and out of respect for the family, I'll just leave that there.
Mhm.
But she asked him to watch this particular 60-minute documentary of the
Mhm.
facilitator. Before he watched it, he asked, what tribe am I from, thinking that I was Māori,
Mhm.
and to find out that I wasn't, what are you doing bringing a Pākehā on my bloody marae? Anyway, he watched the documentary, and at the end of
Mhm.
it, he's never met me. And at the end of the documentary, he goes, "Does she have a man?" um, Nobody thought that he'd show up, and he did. And
Mhm.
I had been uncles, aunties, nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters. So I had been facilitating the majority of the day. Um, Cut a very long story short, at midnight, he decides to get in front of me, and I'd challenge any psychiatrist to tell you whether he was quite a formidable chap. But he decides to sit in front of me, and where I'm different from counselling and psychotherapy is that I share my own experiences. I personally prefer that approach because I believe that it's important to not be in a hierarchical position when you're asking somebody to be vulnerable. I'd rather
Mm.
go toe
Oh,
to
I
toe.
love that.
I'd
I
rather,
love
I can
that.
get more from somebody if
Yeah.
I'm going toe to toe with them.
Yeah.
And so I pulled everything from my arsenal imaginable, and something happened between us. Wasn't spoken, but it was felt.
Mm.
And I,
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps just listening to it, so I
Mm,
can only imagine.
mm.
Oh my God.
And
Oh.
he had a number of choices because the path he was going down wasn't conducive to it serving him.
Mhm.
And he agreed to take on everything that I recommended, obviously out of him seeing a self-interest in it for himself. He never really knew love off the back of his upbringing, and unbelievable the steps that he took within hours of us meeting. Nobody knew that we'd met that night. But he took all of the actions, and he allowed me to open the floor, which is very unusual as a white woman to do that.
Mhm.
And then Roger got up and addressed everybody. And in New Zealand, the nose to nose, the hongi,
Yeah.
everybody lined up. And after Roger had pretty much done everything and cleaned up with everybody publicly, people were just amazed. And then I think he got to about the third person and just burst into tears to watch a man of that magnitude just receive love. It was
Wow.
like it wasn't it wasn't just being moved. It was like a lifetime of
Mhm.
whew. Um, Within 3 months we were together. Within a year we were married, and we were together for 13 years. And he came through my education. He was at the back of most of my retreats. He had quite a testimony. I had quite a testimony. Um,
Yeah.
and, from an inspirational standpoint, it was a profound privilege. And being in a
Mm.
bicultural marriage, I shared um, in the last um, iteration a bit about my past and
Mhm.
also the controversy that ensued back in 2018 with the character assassination.
Yeah.
A lot of the controversy was due to the mokokoa that I wear,
Mhm.
which was a sacred honor, sacred gift that was gifted, uh,
Mm.
completely authorized by Roger's family,
Yeah.
but the media painted it like I was pretty much I was accused of cultural misappropriation, and it went global, CNN,
Mm.
Fox News, the whole nine yards. But this for me is about me honoring the journey of what it's taken
Yeah.
from the gang rape and abduction to the contribution that I've made to thousands of people over the last 25 years. The simplicity
Mhm.
of design denotes that I make transformation easy.
Yeah.
Um, in receiving,
And sorry. Yeah, yeah, no, go on. I think you're getting to the part that I just wanted to ask you to share in receiving.
yes, I was asked recently around, when I received it, was it done through modern or the old way? And I said it was both. But
Mhm.
that when I laid on the table, I kind of like went somewhere, and when I came back, um, the I don't know, the epiphany or the I was moved by a sense of feeling reborn.
Yeah.
That when my soul split out at the age of 15 on the block, I have I had been completely separated from my body for that amount of,
Mhm.
and it was kind of like coming full circle. And my respect for indigenous cultures is more than my own, if I'm honest. The
Yeah.
injustice and the I mean, I've been somebody who's been criticized, judged, assessed most of her
Mm.
life for various reasons.
Yeah.
And I am an advocate for bringing good into the world. And obviously, when you bring good, there's a tendency of attracting the dark. And any
Mm.
leader who is showing up above the parapet, has to navigate that terrain.
Yeah.
But in the context of Indigenous cultures, I've had the privilege to work with American Indian, First Nations people, Aboriginal and Maori for over 30 years. Not that the media would know that. And so I feel privileged that I experienced being in a bicultural marriage with Roger.
Yeah.
And the te reo language is one of the most profound languages on the planet. And the just the privilege it is, you know.
Mm.
Aroha
I
is the
think,
word for love in Māori,
yeah.
and there is a lot of aroha with reference to um, healing grief,
And there's a beautiful part in your book where you share something about I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. I'm sorry, my accent makes it really hard for me to pronounce those words. But where two love hearts, the
Yes,
signs from Roger.
yeah,
Can you share that story? It's one of my favorite parts in the book. When I read that, I'm like, oh my god, this is I love that. We so talk about the signs from loved ones. So maybe you can share that little part if you're okay with that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I actually posted something the other day that those that don't believe in miracles will never experience miracles, right?
Yeah.
And I
Mm.
also believe that when your loved one has passed over, they send many signs. Whether you're open to those signs or not is another thing.
Yeah.
And I can be as skeptical as the next person, don't get me wrong, but I
Mm.
did test it. So on my wall here, I have the word love, and um, the O of love is a heart, and then
Mhm.
aroha, which is the
Mhm.
Māori interpretation of love, is also the O as a heart. And so, I'd be facilitating a session or whatever, and the hearts, nothing else would fall off, just the hearts. And this went on for, a couple of weeks, and, I'm talking blue tack, I'm talking, I mean, I really tried to stick those onto the wall. And there was one day where I just got so frustrated because I knew, but I wasn't willing to admit it.
Yeah.
I said, okay, Rog, if this is you, pop those hearts off the wall. Let's see how good you are. Kind of a bit cheeky. I just went on my day. I didn't think anything of it. And
Yeah.
sure enough, it was on like the next day or the day after or whatever, and I was in a session, and both hearts popped off at the same time, and I'm just going, okay, okay, um, yeah, pretty special. But
Mm,
in some of the chapters that I have in recalibration, because it's all very well to listen to us today, but I'm really wanting your listeners to be able to go away, especially if they know of anybody, if they know of anybody who's experiencing grief and or trauma and is unable to get beyond it, regardless of what it is that they've tried, or they might be
mm,
listening, and because the litmus test to know whether you've gotten beyond your past and whether you've done enough healing is when the past has no impact on you.
mm.
Right? I mean, there's not
Yeah,
many people who can say that, you know, and
that's true.
it takes something to do the work, you know. The
Mm,
past cannot be in your future unless you keep putting it there. Um, so one of the or two of the chapters, one's called the womb world, which I really loved. The analogy of when you
mm.
have a child and it's in the womb, it is in
Yeah,
its environment, yeah,
yeah.
and then there's the mother who's in this environment. Um, Two very different environments, but an environment that's nurturing, both. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the womb world is known to the newborn, and this world is known obviously to the mother.
Hmm.
Um, when I heard the concept, which is a Buddhist concept of the womb world, was when somebody passes over, when somebody dies, they're in their world. May not be familiar to us, but they're in another world. Just like the being inside the womb,
Yeah.
from a memory standpoint, we don't remember that, but that was,
Hmm.
what we knew at the time. And so I dedicated a whole chapter to it because it provided me so much solace in those early stages of feeling so severed, so disconnected,
Yeah.
that if we were to contemplate that the womb world, that they're only really 2 inches away from, where you are. Yeah. Like
Mm,
I have a presence. Like when I walk into a room, I have a presence. And Roger, um, had a lot of mana, had a lot of power and presence.
mm.
And so the two of us together were pretty bloody formidable. Yeah. So
Yeah.
now I joke about it, kinda, but I go, if you find me intimidating, then heaven help you when I start channeling my husband. It's kind of like, get the hell out of my way. I'm coming through.
I
But
love it.
but I know I channel my husband.
Mm,
And that whole womb world concept really seeded something from me, with reference
yeah.
to how do you stay connected with those that have
Mm,
passed over
yeah.
in your day to day. Yeah, there's not a day
Yeah.
that I don't speak to Roger,
Mm,
both in the work that I do, in the past, even before I used to keynote, I've got my
mm,
mother, so my father, my brother, my sister, my husband, friends, I've got a whole team of people in the afterlife, who I
mm.
call on before I walk out on stage.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that you do that. And I also want to just quickly say the womb world, that concept, I have to admit it was completely unknown to me before I read it in your book. And I was like, I loved it
yeah,
instantly. It made so much sense. And I know you brought up there are some stand-up comedies about that as well, but completely different. But it's the same concept in a super fun and light way. But when I read it in that concept, I thought this explains everything what I've been feeling the entire time, and um, you would be so familiar with that process when you are going through your own healing, and then all of a sudden you find words to it in Buddhism, in some other people's story, and whatever. It's sort of like all the puzzle pieces are coming together, and makes a better and better picture of all of it. And yeah, I just really loved that part. It made so much sense to me. Um, Sally, we've got a few minutes left, and well, actually, we don't, but it doesn't matter. Let's say we have. Um, and I know we've got one last part to come where we want to wrap it all up, the whole transformation, the whole healing. And we also have something really beautiful in store that came out of our last conversation that we had, completely out of the blue. You sent me a message and said, how do you feel about
mm,
doing something together? It was such a download for you. Do you want to share a little bit about what's coming? Just a few seeds, and then we talk about it in the
sure,
last episode.
yeah. Um, well, given that this beautiful woman sitting in front of me is all about living beyond grief, and given that the book that I've just published is called Beyond Brave, We thought we'd join forces. I kind of
Mm,
thought, we've got 3 episodes, and the combination of we're talking probably 60 years of dual experience here. And
yeah, give or
we
take.
thought, yeah, give or take. So we thought we would explore the alchemy of becoming, and
Mm,
there'll be more details out. But it's a 90 day intensive where there's a lot of live alchemy, live coaching from both Marie and myself,
mm,
pertinent to whatever it is that you're dealing with. It's not purely just based on grief and or trauma. We're wanting to really look at the whole transformational journey of what grief can provide. I think it would
mm,
resonate for a lot of people who are experiencing
yeah.
grief or trauma, but it's not exclusive to that.
Mhm.
So there's going to be more details in our next episode,
Yeah,
and the we're only going to take 20 people, so we want to keep it intimate.
yeah,
Into
yeah.
me, you see, is the goal of intimacy, and being
Mm,
able to give that personalized support. And just in closing, from my perspective, so if any of that resonates, we'll get details out to you.
yeah,
It would be a privilege to be able to serve people at this time, especially with the advent of Beyond Brave book coming out.
yeah.
Um,
Mm,
and there's a lot more that will be coming out in the coming weeks, which is great. But
yeah.
I'll just quickly leave on the chapter of keep swimming. Um,
Yes.
just quickly. Um,
Dorothy.
because I tell you
Yeah.
what, when you're navigating grief, as you know, for those of you out there who are still navigating grief, there are times when you are bowled over by, the likes of, if you're using the analogy of the sea, there
Pathways.
are times, and there are times when you just need to keep swimming. And so the analogy is there are times when you are so tired that
Mm,
you slip into the water,
mm,
but you know that you've got to climb yourself back up to just keep swimming. There are times when you are you're so tired from the exhaustion of being able to swim through the waves and all the rest of it, and then yet another cascade of waves come. The whole concept of keep swimming, eventually, if you swim long enough, you will reach the shore.
yeah.
And I love in Finding Nemo, that keep swimming,
Dorothy.
keep swimming, keep swimming.
Yeah, just keep swimming.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
because I tell you what, you need a sense of humor when you're in the height of it and you don't feel as though that you can
Yeah,
kind of like get beyond it.
yeah,
And you need support. So I believe that the impetus of these 3 episodes are resonating with people. If you have experienced grief and or trauma and you haven't been able to get beyond it and you're ready to get beyond it in a way that you never have, that's where we come in, and that's who we'd
yeah.
love to.
And I think my favorite part of everything that we've put together, and I can't believe, like, how fast we did that. We decided we did it, and the program is standing. It's really incredible how we've built this in such a short amount of time, because we've both got a lot that we can build on, and that was already available to us. So I absolutely love that you had that download, that you put it in front of me, and my heart was a resounding yes. And my favorite part of all of that is about creating the identity. We're really delving deep into identity. And I think a number one question that a lot of people have after an extreme trauma, loss, adversity is the who am I now? And that is a really valid question. And if you are looking for an answer for that, come and join us. So
Mm.
we're looking at starting in July. We haven't put an exact date down yet, but we're thinking of first week in July, and you'll hear more details in our next and final episode with Sally Anderson. Let's not call it final. You might come back at a later date. We never know. Let's just say part 3.
Yeah, we'll open registrations next week, and for the
Yes,
July intake, because we're only going to take these 20 people, and but we
yes,
thought we'd just seed it now for those that it resonates
yeah.
with. It's not about us putting bums on seats in a program. This is about it'll just
Mm-mm-mm.
call to people. It'll just call to people. That's right.
Select the right community here, because yeah, we want those who are really, really ready to dive deep, because that's the only way we do it, right? So, um, Sally, thank you for sharing your beautiful, beautiful, amazing love story with Roger. I really was so looking forward to hearing that part of your story. And in the final chapter, which is coming up next week, again, I call it part 3, not final. Let's take that word out. In part 3 next week, come along and hear about more about the transformation, the transcendence. There is so much more to your story. It gives me goosebumps, and I can't wait to have you back. So thank you for everybody listening in today. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and hit the notification bell so you get notified when we are live again next week at the same time. This is Sally and Marie signing off.